The most important aspect with first-person shooter games is your proficiency with a mouse. A great mouse won't suddenly make you a great player, but it will help, especially if you're willing to learn to use it. I myself am still using a Logitech MX518. I've worn out countless mice in my time, and I believe that I'm in a good position to advise you on what to look for in a mouse. My friend asked me which mouse he should get that's good for gaming, is wireless, and is reasonably cheap. I advised him that he should get himself a cheap wireless mouse and another wired gaming one. I have only had experience with cheap wireless mice. I have been majorly impressed by how their batteries can last for years, but have always been let down a bit by their response times. There's a small amount of lag between moving the mouse and having it move on screen, and as we all know, the right mouse in the wrong place can make all the difference in the world in a cutthroat battle against mature CSGO players, so for me, it's a no-go. That's why I have myself a cheap wireless mouse. It's a bit like having a laptop. It makes using a computer from the comfort of your bed or car seat possible, but is absolutely no substitute for using the real thing. And I mean this. You may think that somehow your bed covers or hairy bloated belly will serve as a great mouse mat, and that you'll somehow be able to lug your bed to a LAN party, but you'll be bitterly disappointed. Real men game using a desktop-based PC and wired mouse. Anybody thinking they'll stand a chance with the delay and inconsistency of a wireless mouse, or laptop for that matter, should give up PC gaming and go find themselves a nice console. At least then, everybody's handicapped by horribly nerfed controls. Seriously, why do people think that a controller is good for a shooter game? How is it? It can't be. I refuse to accept it. In my opinion, the most important thing is to get a mouse without any acceleration. To test yours for it, try putting it to the side of a table and slide it off the side. No, you've still got to be holding on to it. Idiot. The mouse cursor should stop straight away on screen. If it grinds to a halt, then it's not good. You've stopped moving the mouse. Why is it still moving on screen? That's not going to help your accuracy. The whole point of getting good with a mouse is that you know how far you must move it for your character's aim to move a certain distance on screen. This is why mouse smoothing or acceleration is bad. It makes it impossible to learn flick shots and things built around your muscle memory. Ugh, I hate those phrases. I might as well say that it promotes synergy as well. I've heard that a lot of mice have a problem with mouse acceleration, and the older, lower DPI ones tend to be better, like the old Razer Diamondback, mine broke, and my Logitech MX518. However, I've also had a newer 5700 DPI Corsair M60 for a while, which wasn't bad. If you want a cheaper one, my sister's Sharkoon Fireglider is very decent. It's practically a Razer mouse but without the price tag, and I can testify that it's withstood years of punishment from my sister who games. One that I was very disappointed with was the Anker 8200. It looks too good to be true, and it is. It gets fantastic reviews and has all of the features you could ever want in a mouse. It felt very expensive to me, however, it has appalling mouse acceleration. Anker has great customer service and sent me a replacement mouse which suffered from the same thing. I think it's just the laser used in the model. Ultimately, you've got to try the mice out and see how they feel for yourself. I've never used a mouse mat myself, as every mouse I've had has worked perfectly on my wooden desk. That being said, my Corsair M60 had this cool function where it would rate how good a surface was. It would only give my table a middle score, and would give my mum's SteelSeries mouse mat the highest rating. That being said, it also liked my face. Whatever. It's all down to your individual situation and what you game on, but I do see the appeal of the texture of a proper gaming mouse mat. It's also fun to flop about if you get bored. I guess that I should mention the size of the mouse or the way that you grip it. I would say that this is down to personal preference. With my old Razer mice, I had a high sensitivity and could spin all the way round without moving my arm, and would hold them in a claw fashion, where occasionally the mouse wouldn't even be touching the table. I've toned down the sensitivity a bit since then, but I still prefer moving with just my wrist, since I find it more responsive than having to move your entire arm about. But then, look at my desk. It's not as if I have much say in the matter. Sensitivity and DPI is a massive topic that has raged for ages. It almost seems as though it goes through fashions, and high sensitivity is due for a comeback if my tea leaves are to be believed. Once again, I'll say that this is down to personal preference. The pro players seem to use a low DPI or a very low sensitivity. Don't assume that higher DPI is always better. I'm currently playing on 1800 DPI and it's more than enough for my needs. Most mice now come with more than that. I really think it's a number that's thrown about but doesn't really mean that much. Just don't get one of those old 400 DPI mice or something like that. There is a limit. As long as you can move one pixel at a time in game and can spin around quickly enough to shoot people behind you, you're okay. I think that the most important thing is to find a setting that you like where you can easily turn 180 degrees in either direction in a battle without having to pick up your mouse to reposition it, and to practice on this setting. I would be very wary of changing your sensitivity while playing. My Corsair M60 had a sniper button, which would lower the sensitivity if pressed, and most mice have an on-the-fly sensitivity change button. I found myself always holding down the sniper button, suggesting that perhaps I had my sensitivity up too high normally. But also, it's something else that you have to fiddle about with in the middle of a battle. Stick to one and master it, rather than trying to learn two or even more. Your brain will punish you for being indecisive. I'm almost happy not to have a mouse with a distracting sniper button. It really became a bad habit and stops you from mastering flick shots with your mouse. Now onto the buttons. How many do you need? I'm quite content with the usual 2 fire buttons and a scroll wheel. I try to keep mouse buttons to a minimum and let that hand focus on aiming and shooting for first person games. That being said, I find navigating the internet frustrating without those side buttons, so it's useful to have them there for that, but in game I hardly ever use them. I currently have them set to chat so I can talk to my teammates, but since it's on the same thing that I use to shoot people, it jogs my aim if I have to press them in game. Fortunately, I hardly ever talk when I'm alive in game, and generally use it to shout abuse once I'm dead, so it doesn't affect me at all. I don't see the point of mice with buttons on the other side, unless you're left-handed. In which case, buttons on the right are pointless. Nobody's got time for that when fighting angry 13-year-olds on CSGO. If I scroll down then I jump. This was great in Counter-Strike Source since it almost guaranteed that you'll jump the moment that you hit the floor, letting you bunny hop across the map at great speed. I used to have the scroll click set to my secondary weapon so that I could quickly change in a fight, but once again I think that the keyboard does a better job. I like to keep my mouse simple for FPSs, but feel free to experiment and to see what works well for you. As for weights, I never bother with them. It's a marketing gimmick and most mice are a decent weight to start with. In fact, I started becoming paranoid and dissatisfied that my mouse never felt the right weight when I was burdened with the important task of choosing the correct one. I just put a certain amount of weight in, then lost the rest in a drawer somewhere and never thought about it again. I think it's there to make people feel really pro for having a completely customized mouse, but it makes absolutely no difference in game, unless moving your mouse is your sole source of exercise. Don't even get me started on flashing lights. My Copperhead had a pulsating icon that you couldn't disable, and it got me into all kinds of weird and OCD-like habits that psychologists would likely deem highly interesting. For the day or so that I had the Anchor in its replacement, I set both mice to bright pink for a joke, then returned them. They're probably still at Anchor's head office somewhere. That being said, I was grenading people for weeks after CSGO released the secondary grenade throw button. Seems I've been ritualistically tapping it for no reason for years. If you're that kind of person, steer well clear of mice with LEDs. One thing to look out for is how close to the desk the laser can operate. Some mice can be adjusted in this regard, but I know that it can be frustrating where, if you were to pick up your mouse and to place it down again, your aim flies all over the place. I blame this partially on a high sensitivity, but be on the lookout for this when buying a mouse. You don't want to be accused of hacking because your aim shakes about occasionally. It probably isn't that big a deal if you're still playing well enough to be accused in the first place. Some mice, like my sister's Sharkoon, come with an auto-fire button, though in all honesty, most mice have software that enables you to do this anyway. Here is what the pistols in CSGO look like when using an auto-fire button. The great thing is, you can focus on the aiming instead of having to bash a fire button repeatedly, which can make you less accurate in a firefight. My friend has the most ridiculous controls in the world, using RDFG instead of WASD so that there are more keys nearby to use. He also has spacebar as fire, since it gives him more accuracy in a button mashing battle. It seems to work. I collected all of the mice in the house and conducted a face-off between them. On a normal 60Hz setting, there was no difference between the 3 wired mice. Once I set my monitor to 120Hz however, my Logitech MX518 became less precise than the other two, skipping out frames several times a second. I'm assuming that this is because it's limited to 125Hz, as opposed to the Corsair which was set to 1 millisecond or 1000Hz. I don't know what the Sharkoon was, but once again it performed brilliantly. And finally, reliability. Something nobody wants to talk about since it's boring, but it means so much to me since I've spent a small fortune over the years on a number of mice. My Razer Diamondback and Copperhead mice have all developed squeaking buttons, and one's cable got bent too many times and became unresponsive, which is odd since it comes with a protector where it connects with the mouse. My Corsair M60's scroll button stopped working, which is far more annoying than I could have imagined. It made Operation Flashpoint impossible. I'd avoid any bull mice. I think that the Razer Boomslang was the last one to have it as some kind of retro feature, but it still underperformed versus a laser. Ultimately, I've loved the feel of Razer mice. They glide beautifully, are great to hold, and have all of those fancy features that make you feel special. However, it's my no-frills Logitech MX518 that has stood the test of time. It's covered in finger sludge, has an old-fashioned visible laser, occasionally has a stiff or imprecise scroll wheel, has perished and easily scratchable rubber on one side, and makes a high-pitched squeaking sound, but it's the closest thing to an indestructible mouse that I've ever encountered.